Dun, 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 dun. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is behind the scenes of the untitled second movie of the saga of Space Vanguards. I think we're now calling it Advanced Guard. I am all day today downloading the making of that I re-edited, paring it down. It was 4 hours of making of footage. I pared it down to 2.5 hours, so there was a lot of redundant stuff in there. Didn't need to be there. A lot of guessing didn't need to be there. A lot of character names. Thinking, oh, we're gonna explain how this name works and how that works, and then there was a lot of like repetitive stuff later on. There was a lot of retraction in it, oh, we're not going to do that. So it's like, let's cut that whole line of text out. It doesn't need to be there. Yeah, if they didn't end up doing that, why leave it in the making of? There are 2 deleted scenes in this movie that will never be seen from the last movie. There were 2 deleted scenes. I'll just tell you about them. They were near the end of the second part, and one of them was going to be a repeat of an earlier gag where the Diva Clark character eats a butterfly, and Kimchi goes, "You shouldn't eat those. They're bad for you." He says, "Oh, no problem. My species doesn't have an allergic reaction." Repeating a joke immediately, like half an hour after the other joke, don't do that. Same problem with the other deleted scene. So, I was gonna have. Oh, I thought it was funny. A panel falls on Sarah again. Wasn't in the script. Just decided, oh, a panel should fall on Sarah again. And the panel. No, again, repeating a joke. You don't need to do that. So I'm not doing it. This is going to be brief. I'm not going to ramble about any other thing. Mark's Cards is still in Japan, and but I'll just say that I'm continuing with what amounts to season 1 of the series, which was book 1, a little over 513 pages. The season 1, which was never fully produced back in the day, the original Starcrackers, or Space Vanguards as it's called in the books. There's a slight error when that came out. It actually came out in book form in 2019, not 2020, but you don't need to fix that. There's fiscal year 2020. It's fine. But yeah, there was a movie version in 2014. That's accurate. Came out on YouTube. In both forms, short form and long form. 2014, technically 2012 in short form, episodic, 2 or 3 episodes, 90-minute movie. Yeah, so it all looks good. It's very funny, and we have well, I think there's about 8 to 11 episodes, but they're short. They're not as long as Canary Space. The story is about 70 pages. The novel's about 70 pages shorter than Canary Space. So I think it's another 2 movies. Well, this one has been the larger episodes. I already went over. The next one is kind of the rest of the quest going on their missions, doing other things. Notice that they rebuilt sets, which are now series quality instead of movie quality, are designed to continue the movie story quickly and efficiently. Trimmed down some of the by a few inches to make them medium scale set floors, because the set floors were bowing on the ends. So I figured, well, why don't we just make them the same scale as the Chimera A bridge floor, and just use the Chimera A bridge floor as a template and cut the edges off that are coming off. So I did. It works. That's a template. So and chucked all the debris away. The sets are rebuilt to match, and actually less. We're using less of the extra sections as well, so we have ability to switch other ones in there. No new stuff was built for it. The bridge is a little different. It's more like it's It's more like the bridge of the Canary ship. The ships are not supposed to be Galinsky class, but they are. That's what we call them here. The the Vanguard and the Luxon. I think the Vanguard is supposed to be Statesman class, and the Luxon is supposed to be one of the other ones, the Sojourner class. And no specific name other than that's what we call them. No hidden secrets. Some of the ships, models, and things used. I think at the end of the story that's coming up, you're going to have to make some new beauty shots of some of the other unmarked, unnamed Canary ships and other ships zipping around, just to add flavor to it. Don't just use the Harbinger over and over again because it looks like the Harbinger. So yeah. Anyway, it's fine once or twice, but yeah. I don't think you're going into book 2 at all. I really don't think you need to. And that would be the, Aslo Trimate Gaper being the longest one in there. The other, although differences is in there. I keep mentioning differences. What that was that was a TNG spec script that's been rewritten as a Star Trackers back in the day. What they did is they wrote Mark's Cards and I did, mainly me, is I wrote a series of 8 to 10 episodes of the Starcracker series after the pilot, with intent to film those episodes, and that never happened. They ended up being storybooks / scripts. Because they're scripts, they're probably fairly easy to film. They were never filmed. The series was not picked up. The Kiwi Fiasco story that we just shot, the second half of this movie previously, was actually a later story adapted from rejected episodes and formed into a later story that was done in it was some of the episodes. It was in the series. It was in that series of 8 to 10 episodes, but it was rejected, and then it was rewritten in 2001. Under the auspice of Prospectors. We're not going to do Prospectors. We're not going to do season 2, which is the novella season after the show allegedly ended, canceled. There was a second season. Anyway, there was a second season of Time Travel. We decided not using any of that. We didn't even reprint that. No point in that. That would have been really, really weird. And there was at least one crossover with distant cousins. That's not going to work either. We're not doing that. At some point, if there was ever a crossover, write it new from scratch. Don't use that story. It doesn't work. Write it new from scratch. Have them be meeting on a planet, a la Q or something. Yeah, they happen to be there. Doesn't have to be time travel. Doesn't be dimensional travel or anything. They just go, they visit there. Don't have to do that. I would not recommend doing it. Also, you have where it's only going to be book 1 anyway, which ends with Send Off, last episode, and so which was originally a 2-parter, but it had a flashback for like a whole episode. I was like, we didn't need the flashback. No, I took that out. It's not there. We moved the flashback to in some way it was rewritten as the other story that happens earlier. There's another story dealing with Rebia that's kind of like that. The one of the early stories was The Stage is Set. That's what it was called, where they meet this fantastical ship, but multi-vector assault mode, kind of like what later appeared on Voyager as the Prometheus. It had several ships that came off of it. So that ship, that story. This is before Voyager even was a thing. It was before Voyager was a thing. Stage is Set. Decided not to use that because there was no way to film it. It was impossible to film that. Nobody would ever do that. Voyager did it later. But some elements of that. So Differences was a Next Generation spec script. It was never completed. It was rewritten as 2 later spec scripts when the writing contest happened. It was written, parts of it became elements of Fearful Symmetry, the spec script, and for Deep Space Nine. And the other one, the new for Voyager, which was a new show that was coming out. Star Trek Voyager in the 90s. That's also a new show at the time. Deep Space Nine, 93, and then Voyager, 1995. So yeah, the Voyager one became the Arbiter, and many years later, in Starship Locations, we updated the release of Fearful Symmetry and the Arbiter, called it the Arbiter of Keptera. Put it in our stuff instead. So, on the suggestion by David Gerald, he said, "Oh, adapt your fan films, earlier stuff." Okay, so we did. Oh, yeah, so he was a sort of a Star Trek person, was a pseudo consultant on Strange Worlds and Strange Worlds Destinations and the other ones, indirectly, because we kept running into him in conventions, well, twice actually. But yeah, he approved of the Tribble story. We've been over that. But anyway, yeah, and he hadn't actually watched any of it at that point. So, but yes, he was at that convention. We don't need to go over that. He saw the pilot and he said it was fine. And he said, "Don't do Blood and Fire." Anyway, we weren't going to do that anyway. We're going to do one of his, another one of his, just that one, the Tribbles. We did the Tribble one, but Starcrackers also did the Arbiter. It called it Judgments. It did a version of the Arbiter later on in what would be book 2, season 2. And then there's a version of it that also appeared in Prospectors. There's like a third version of it in that one within the Missing Little Story. So there's like, that one's been done a couple of times. So we did the Arbiter at least twice in Starcracker. We don't need to do it any of those times again. It's already been done. So that one's, yeah, we don't need to do that. Even if it would be funny to find out if Henderson's father is really missing. if it's still part of this first book, then it's going to get done. But it would have to be updated for this story to work. I skimmed through the middle of the book there, just the middle chapter there, some of the episodes, and it was like including the Queen one and the Homecoming one and all that, and the Cult of Oddities one and all that, Send Off. And it's like, yeah, you have. Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna finish the book. So there's 380 pages left of the book, something like that. Two more movies, and yeah, wrap up a trilogy. Now a Community Space, where it's not like Canary Space where you have 4. There's 3. There's 3 because of the way the pacing works in Starcrackers. It's not as large as we discovered. But did these 2 stories back to back, and they were an hour each, so they were not full movies. They were put together, but the pacing works and the story works, and even though, yeah, you get halfway through and you're like, oh, it's a little bit jarring and a little different, but then it catches up, and then it's like, oh, okay, so clearly this was meant to be sort of like it was a habit after Best of Both Worlds and Next Generation. They would do a 2-part episode and then continue. One part would be one season, one part would be the next, and there'd be a jarring disconnect. Even with Best of Both Worlds, the disconnect, they completely drop some of the backstory and just keep going to do the second half to rescue the captain or whatever, Picard, and they ignore the other stuff that was going on with Shelby and all that. It's the same thing with Descent 1 and 2. They do this certain thing, they get it to a point, they do that. Time Zero 1 and 2, same kind of thing. Unification 1 and 2, same kind of thing. So yeah, some of but not so much the Klingon ones. They were kind of together. We're not doing a review of Next Generation. Just saying that's what they kind of did, and that's what I kind of did. As I took these 2 stories, which we considered pilots, and stuck them together into a 190-minute movie. Well, it came out a little over 2 hours and 14 minutes, but that's because the other one was a little longer. Yeah, so yeah, it works. It's fine. It's funny. Let's keep going. Let's do the rest. Yeah, that's all. So if we're going to do the rest and film them back to back, put them all in the can, have them all done, like we did the Canary Space 3 and 4, and put them in a can, have them done, and then you put them together. So yeah. And you might save on the first pass, second pass thing by doing the first pass a little more succinct. First pass. Yeah. I'm not saying pre-record the lines. That's way too hard. I just put them in the scene because you want a little go motion moving around. You don't want to make it just a static comic book. You don't want to do Canary Space Book 1 again, where it was very static in places. Where just yeah. It all works. It was just a different pacing, a different story. It works. It's a slow burn kind of thing in that one. This one is more hyperactive comedy. Yeah, it's a little more, jokes every so often. Yeah, Canary Space didn't have jokes really. It was kind of serious. Even though there were comedic elements, certainly the fourth act is certainly very funny with the Shatner imitation going on. Very funny, very funny back. And the version of him appears in this one as well. He's a Will Horror. In fact, everybody's a something. As I reviewed that thing and was originally fretting about the McPherson character and the Petty character and the other person and all that, going, oh, we got the wrong guy again. But we didn't, as it turns out. When you put the story together, it's not the wrong guy. So don't need to worry about it. Yeah, the implication is that there was a character, the McPherson character, other character, Dwarrick and Darren, and the other ones, they were all together on the ship. And the implication is that she was a Pettia. She was a Pettia. And that she defected. That's what's going on in the story. And from the stronghold of the Cunningham and took off. She defected. So that makes sense. They just never really... They kind of do address it, though, because when you did McPherson, the character, as Jan Carey Dark, Kerrigan's character shows up, she's a little angry at Clark and the others. She's trying to figure out what's going on, implying that her commander took off, possibly her husband, wife, her mate took off to be a bad guy. Now, they don't directly say it, but it's definitely implied, very forcefully implied. That's what happened. So that's actually kind of cool. I was like, oh, okay, that works. I don't know why she betrayed the Federation, but she did. And then she took off to be the president of a planet, which comes up later. That's why I'm mentioning it. Alicia Pettia tries to take over the planet Migrin later on. The Queen Must Die was the name of the episode. Yes, Homecoming and Queen Must Die. And those two episodes were written by Tim Cantrell. So, a long time ago. 98, 93, 92, 93. Well, he came up with the idea, the premise, and I wrote it. But Mark's cards helped. But we were basically spoofing the twin girls from Pine Hill, the Libby and Chris and all that. That idea has been done in Starship locations already a couple of times. The idea of the story, so it has been done. So it's like we're kind of treading on similar ground here with our own stuff. The Mirror Universe episode, especially the one where they go to the other Flodi in that one episode of Destinations, and they encounter the Mirror Universe where the evil Queen Lady is commander of the ship. It's supposed to be like the Petty character. That's supposed to be. So yeah, and then Sela appearing again to help in the battle with O and the others in the other story with Esteban in that other episode in Legacy. This also ties into that Queen story. And also in Canary Space, Destiny's ties into the Queen story again when they have the Queen of the Letumak. But in that case, we turn the tables on it. She's actually the good guy. She's the good guy. Yeah. So Jan Kerrigan Dark could be related to Jan Kerrigan. Jan Dark in the story is Kerrigan's daughter, and it's presumably that because I'm uploading those things and I'm rambling, but I'm explaining what's going to happen next, so it's fine. The characters, they are technically kind of hinted at that in the making of as well. They are technically their children from the original story. They're all adults now, and they're technically the offspring of the characters from the original story. That's what they're supposed to be. No, so it's a reboot with the cast. Yeah, sure. Why not? But they're all adults. Yes. The oldest is the Colonel. She's like around 37, 36, 37. And the others are in their 20s in the story, all of them. So that Henderson is merely like that because his parents were like that. So, like being a jerk. Thompson is like that because it's just sort of this familial thing. Thompson is not blamed for his actions though because he wants to be this aggressive, hostile character, but he really isn't. And so that's behind the scenes. It's his birthday during the episode. There's we don't know what day that is in the story. We didn't establish what time in 2488 it is. The next story takes place a little bit later. I'm thinking it probably takes place in 2489, just because it was the end of 2488 in the Sphere story. It was around November, roughly, let's say. That one. So the next one is going to be a couple months later, and they had some refit. Fortunately, the ships were all attacked heavily in the battle, and they had to rebuild everything. That's what. Kind of like the Canary Space and the Endeavour looking different between the first one and the second. Because they really didn't show it in the first movie. They showed it in the second and third and fourth, but not so much in the third. So they were able to get away with that. But yeah. So yeah, the Queen's story. It had nothing to do with any real queen. It wasn't a riff on Queen Elizabeth, who has since passed. It was just we thought it would be funny to have one of our have the gag be, instead of it being an evil admiral that goes and takes over a planet or something, it's a lady who does it, an evil lady sort of guy. We weren't thinking of First Contact when that story was written. It was 1993. First Contact wasn't written yet. and they have to go there and stop her. Although they're technically space cops, so they have no jurisdiction there really. Space Marines keeping the peace. And that makes it different from the other one too, because you're kind of saying, okay, they have no jurisdiction on the planets they go to. They do say only the fleet planets. So Desiree, they'd have jurisdiction. Megarin, they would have jurisdiction, but so would the Zuri. The planet they visited, Lydios, is all Zuri. At least that should be the Zuri planet. Rebia is, of course, Zuri. Gundahar is another Zuri planet, moon of the other one. And then there's a weird connection I forgot to mention in the making of the other one. Originally, Silly Trek. The names actually come from the infamous Teddy Ruxpin Iliop TNG episode story idea that goes back to Silly Trek season 1, which was adapted as a update reboot in Legacy. They find the Teddy Ruxpin ship adrift in space. And originally, Roger Math had control of the cyborg ship. Kind of like the Borg, a little bit before the Borg in 1987, where Next Generation was even like just a few months old at that point. Months old. So it was just started, and there was no Borg yet. And they go and they find the ship, the Legacy ship from 30 years ago, and that's fun. Okay, So the Zuri were called the Ruxpins in the original Silly Trek story. And Raxler was literally a conversion of Teddy Ruxpin. Like a robot, like animatronic attacking guy. You might think, it's kind of a ripoff of Five Nights at Freddy's. That would be the case if Five Nights at Freddy's existed in 1987. No, Chuck E. Cheese. That's what Five Nights at Freddy's came from. It's a rip-off of Chuck E. Cheese. And pizza, and Showbiz Pizza. When I was a kid, in the 80s, 81 I was 11, 87 I was 17. Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese was the animatronics and all the things going on. And then also was Country Bear Jamboree in Disneyland as well. And the animatronics, they should be evil and take over and stuff. Also, yeah, Showbiz Pizza had a bear. And then Chuck E. Cheese had a big rat with a stogie because they were like trying to compete with him. And they had a rat costume, but they didn't have a mouse costume. So he was supposed to be a mouse, but he's a rat. He was originally a rat, and now they've made him more of a mouse, or a mouse-like. But yeah, that's the story of Chuck E. Cheese. And so yeah, we were silly, because we were teenagers, boys, playing like playground. Very immature. And we thought, oh yeah, I'll cross it with Teddy Ruxpin, our favorite the Saturday morning cartoon show. Just cross it with Teddy Ruxpin shows up. I thought it would be funny if Teddy Ruxpin shows up. So there was a real Teddy Ruxpin. And there was an early version of Star Crackers. It was called the Graham Cracker Chronicle, in which evil Admiral General guys take over stuff, and it was supposed to be Roger Math and Dawn from the Silly Track. And they were going to take over the fleet and cause a ruckus, and there was going to be like people just in disguise and stuff, and it's going to be like a cybernetic thing, a disease that attacks them and whatever, and because we were silly. And and they were spreading boredom and lethargy and lack of creativity. Ironically, Roger was creative, but for some reason that I don't know what we were on about. But yeah, the Graham Cracker Chronicle was the board, that other footage that we had left over. But yeah, before the board, way before the board, 87 and 88, and then we were kind of ripping it off later in 91. So Graham Cracker Chronicle came out in 89, and it was lost. So, Graham Cracker Chronicle came out 89. And so that story that has the three redacted stories, the second half of Sphere of Influence, that's called the Kiwi Fiasco, is essentially the Graham Cracker Chronicles. It's the same plot. They're after a ship. They're trying to get it. There's this ship that gets beaten at the end. There is a gag about a rock star in it. In the original, it was New Kids on the Block. The 87 version. 89 version. New Kids on the Block show up. They walk into frame. There was a slight rewrite in 1991 during the Starcrackers thing, or a slight rewrite idea where it wouldn't be New Kids on the Block anymore in 91. It'd be Vanilla Ice. So it became Vanilla Ice instead because he was out. Because he appeared in Ninja Turtles 2 and that was really bad. So we were sort of thinking that when rewriting that story that was ultimately rejected as the Kiwi Fiasco. It got rejected. The three different stories got rejected. 10 years later in 2001, well, let's do this. Let's do the Kiwi Fiasco. And now, 2025, we did. And also, that rock star thing, it's in there. But it's not Vanilla Ice anymore. He's called Blossom Janoli. Because Vanilla Ice doesn't make sense. We just thought it would be funny if rock stars appeared on the screen. If you go back even further, Silly Track was always doing stuff like that. There was at least references to Michael Jackson and Back to the Future and stuff. That was big in the 80s. And there was of course, Michael Jackson jokes and all that. We won't go into that. But yeah, rock stars have appeared before. And he was the other famous one. He appeared alongside Ronald Reagan in an episode of Silly Track. I'm sure the late Ronald Reagan and the late Michael Jackson would not appreciate either of their appearances. But yes, in our silly game. Anyway, so yeah, Teddy Ruxpin and other stuff. So does that mean that the Zuri then are related to the people that constructed the giant Teddy Ruxpin? Because I like to put a connection in that story where they went to Sigma. They went to that binary stars thing and went there. And is that related to that? Yes, they are related. They're related to that. And the giant sphere. They're related to that. So yeah, there's a connection. Ooh, don't know what it is, but there's a connection. And giant sphere. And then we have which probably doesn't get mentioned again until way later. And then you have they don't actually see the Teddy Ruxpin ship in this anywhere. It's not in there. They've been replaced with the Zuri. So yeah, they're not in there. Also, they have to skirt the line and say like, okay, we can't actually have like we didn't understand how to do jokes about different characters of creeds and races, and it's not nice. So we have to say like, okay, they're green, their religion doesn't really reflect any real religion anywhere. They're this or that, and they might be a little bi, but everybody's a little bi in the story. So. Everybody's Metro in the story. Yeah, so that's cool. But yeah, so yeah, don't worry about the. It's not. There's no message. It's just being silly. Yeah, and yeah, it's hilarious that now 30 years later we're able to like Starship locations, which has in the DNA, Starcrackers. It's in the DNA. It's right there. Silly crack. Yeah, it was trying so hard not to be Star Trek, and it always was kind of. Yeah, which we've been over before. And yeah, so to see the story come out as we do the next two, and yeah, next two more movies. Not gonna be 4 of them. There's just 2. Now we're not. It's not a quadrilogy, unless for some reason you want to do some of the stuff in book. No, don't. Book 2 is just they would not be fun. They're not as much fun. No, we don't need to wrap up everybody and know what they're doing. Same thing with Canary Space, which was longer. That was an epic 7 seasons. This is 7 books and 7 seasons. This is 3 seasons. 3 seasons. The book series continued for 2 years. If you cut out the other stuff, and then Prospectors was on 10 years later, in 2001. It was set to be like, yeah, later on with their siblings and their kids and stuff, and it would be at that point. So they're not really their kids though. That all of the actors really they're adults, but the acting in it is all like Kal Kat, and it's not that he's insane. That's not it. No, it's that they're supposed to be. Yeah, some of them are supposed to be descended from the other ones. And Raxler's the kind of guy that would name his kid Raxler Jr. He would do that. and yeah, the complicated kimchi thing going on there. Yeah. Kimchi is the daughter of Marion. Kimchi. Yeah, Kimchi. She's just the daughter of that one. Diva Clark is allegedly the daughter of Sam Clark. Sure. Henderson is the son of the mobster Messi from the planet, apparently. Yeah. Azeloth might not be, but they reference Farine later, so that's kind of Farine. So is that Farine Jr.? That's me, wouldn't it? Is it technically his sister cousin or something? Yeah. And Kerrigan, of course, Dark Jan is a daughter of, originally son of the other guy. But yeah, she's the, and then there's Alicia Nguyen later on who's introduced, just to introduce a token character, which is a little bit messed up that we can introduce a token character. But we don't treat her that way. She ends up being like a foil for some of the other ones. Yeah, and sure, do it. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, so this is just adding to the commentary real brief. Like I said in the other commentary, Mark's Cards is already in Japan. He hasn't left yet. Mark's Cards is leaving for Japan in the morning on the 14th. So he hasn't left yet. Yeah, so but there was no John Knight tonight. So that was that. Just thought I'd update that. I was reviewing the other episodes, and yeah, we're gonna do the rest of the movie of the book. We did almost 200 pages, so doing 300 more shouldn't be that any more difficult than than finish it. So separate those 300 more into 2 150-page stories. There you go. Something like that. Yeah, you have 2 more 2-hour movies, and that's it. A little over 2-hour movies. Or maybe a little under. We'll see. Reading that with Andy. Yeah. And you don't need to worry about all the Teddy Ruxpin stuff. That obviously isn't in this version. Don't worry about that. What we've done is scene 16, which is half of the lesson at Rebia. 7 pages. And there's 7 pages left of the episode. And I want to do the rest of it tomorrow. And then go on to the next episode and the next one. I think here's a good time to stop. Yeah. So the lesson at Rebia, which is in the lexicon, there's going to be, this is episode 3 of the beginning of the next, So, good. Completed the lesson at Rebia. It's episode 3. There's 11 of them, or 12 of them? So this is a making of segment of Vanguard Space. It has been several days. Again, there it is. But we're back to filming, probably most likely tomorrow. And Mark's Cards is still in Japan till the end of the month. And later on, other people show up. But anyway, so that doesn't matter. I went through the remaining stories and episodes. We completed one of them so far, the one about the planet, the planet thing, and that's about 15-16 minutes of story in movie 2, and so this is movie 2 and movie 3, but movie 2, and so I went through and I found all the scene breaks and wrote down, whether it's in the bridge, the meeting room, the shuttle bay, the planet, the bar, or the lounge, whatever, the cabin, and went through the whole rest of the remaining stories from episode 3 all the way to episode 16, and in season 1 of the series. As you know, episodes 1 and 2 they were so large that they made up a complete 2-hour movie, whereas 3 to roughly 3 to 9 makes up 6, and then 11 to 16 makes up 5. So 6 more. So you have a couple of double episodes in movie 3 they're in an hour, a little under an hour, and there's where you're going to get most of your stuff around that, or the short short episodes. The way that the story is structured, you should easily be able to just say, they're in most of the events of the episodes were in specific planets and areas. They go back to Lydios and Megoran and stuff like that, and Desiree mainly, Rebia a little bit. But you don't need to do that. You can just say they're in that area of space, and that's where they are. And the cult episode that's later on, that one is just in that same area. You can totally do that. Also, note that the cult episode is not making fun of TMS, Marshall Sportiest. It predates it by several years, by decades. It's to 94. That story. A lot of these little short story episodes were thrown in there in this first book. Almost all of them. Some were rejected and not included. But we won't talk about the rejected and not included ones, because all the other ones got included. Also, the idea that these space cops continue to get a little better at their jobs is a little off, because they wouldn't really. It's not like the Big Bang Theory where they're excellent at everything immediately after like 5 seasons. They shouldn't be. It's not like that. But no, they're the characters, the younger characters in the story are going to the academy. They're training to go to the police space cop academy, that kind of thing. They're not called space cops though. They're called Nationally United Terran Stars. They're called the officers and crew in the story. They don't refer to them at all as space cops. That's just kind of what they came out sounding like. They're not space cops at all. So we have some of our characters that appeared in book 1 appearing in books 2 and 3. Then they set them up in that one story in the second half. And yeah, they kept reappearing. You could totally play that along with that and say like, okay, they're yeah, like they did in that story, the second half of the book. You could have them show up and do their thing. A solar system is really big when you have an alien solar system in a story. And they go to the Zuri planet twice, Ribia, Zuri planet, in both stories. They go to Migoran and they go to Desiree a few times, but they do it in such a way that they're not there long. And yeah, there's an episode, Planet of Desire, which is next. It's a ways off, which used to be the season premiere of season 2, but it ended up being, in this version, it's the last story in season, or book 2. Book 2. And then book 3 is all the other stuff. The difference is episode, which was a Next Generation spec script, is different from the Arbiter that it became. It became the Arbiter. There's some elements of Fearful Symmetry in there too as well. But these were all 6 months before those 2 episodes were conceived as short story scripts as well. So it's kind of fun to do an earlier version of it, different people. And actually the character, this is from movie 3. This is going to be movie 3, but it's fine. Yeah. So don't need to worry about it, but it does include Henderson and his father. And Henderson's father is, of course, the character of who we've met before, Messi, the character from the Mob Planet. And to the characters in the story, the 36-year-old Colonel and her cast of people ranging in age from late 20s to early 20s, they, and Henderson included, are supposed to be. They're aware that they're living in the year 2025. So they are even though they're playing characters who would be in 2488, 70 years after the events of Legacy, they aren't. They're really in 2025 in real life. So they're, if they were people in the story, if they were, yeah, we're not crazy. If they were in the story, they would be them. They would be their kids, not their grandkids. So that's what. It doesn't have to be, but it kind of is for some of them. But yeah, so there was a hiatus. Just other things came up. There was car servicing. There was other things to be mailed out. There were other things going on. The studio couldn't do filming. So now I'm getting back to filming. Yeah, and yeah, it is the 20th of March already. Yeah, but we did get we got the episodes out on the 13th or 14th, so it wasn't that long ago. At least it wasn't years later. Also, the later stuff was 1994 and late 1994, about a year into Deep Space Nine, and about around the finale of Next Generation back in the day. Because you might not know, Generation fans, that Star Trek: The Next Generation ran concurrently with Deep Space Nine, and then Deep Space Nine ran concurrently with Voyager. 1987 to 1994 was Next Generation. Deep Space Nine was 1993 to 1999. Voyager was 1995 to 2001, I believe, 2001. Before Enterprise. Enterprise was 2001 to 2005. The new stuff was 2009 and on. Discovery was 2017 and on. The Chimera movie was 2019, and that was in 2388. So this story takes place 100 years after Chimera the movie, and all the stuff lines up. Even the stuff in the other story lines up because they keep referring to Lemisi and Lectori and that kind of thing, which is also referred to in the Arbiter story from Legacy. And it's possible, and Legacy and Destinations, I think is what it was. Starship Destinations. It was before Legacy, and it was referred to in that. And it's possible that in the 70 years since then, they had a major falling out, and their colonies are screwed and messed up. That's kind of implied in the story. So yeah, in the Prospectors series, that we're going to include more furry characters, the cat and a flighted kangaroo from the Gary Sito. I'll give him credit. He did the flighted kangaroo. It's fast Jiffy. We're not doing that because we can't possibly film that. There's no way to make a character like that in Playmate scale that makes any sense. So we can't do the furry generation of the Morgani crew together. No, we're not doing prospectors. It would be fun, but it's not possible. The characters don't look like that. We can have one dog guy and one cat girl, but anything beyond that, and it looks ridiculous. I did complete the Rebbe episode on the planet, and blocked it and put the scenes out, a rough draft of that episode. It's about 17K, which is gigs, not K, which roughly would translate to about 13-14 minutes. When it's all put together, it's about 2 hours raw, and then you shrink down to about 15-20 minutes. Then we figured out. I figured out each episode after that to see where they were in place. It looked like there weren't as many, but then when you count the episode differences in the episode training mission, they're double episodes. You count those, you get 40 minutes there and 40 minutes for the next one. You got almost 80 minutes right there in those two double episodes. And they're quite different. Training mission is after the mission to Rebia. It's a different story. Training mission was an I. Clark flashback from the I. Clark series, which was a sort of pseudo spin-off, and is included in this one because it's fun. You get to see Jan Carey Dark, and it does cause a bit of an oddity in that Jan Carey Dark encounters duplicate brother a couple of times. That's the other Dark, but that works because the other character is the other Yar is the Benton's character. So just grab the other Yar. There she is. That works. Oh, yeah. There's the other Yar. It's her. That's fine. No, nobody's gonna. Yeah. No. Or Sela. No one's gonna say anything. Yeah, the characters can be in other ones. They can even be slightly different than other ones. You have Send Off, which final chapter of the third movie, and it does what it does. Sphere comes back, but yeah, and they go off on their own and stuff. The end of the story, it has a satisfying ending. It's where it ends. The series ended. The continuation is merely the sequel books would have been like Crew Reunites and Prospectors. The other two books, books 2 and book 3. We're not doing those book 2 and book 3. We're just doing the trilogy that makes up book 1, like we did with Canary Space. Except Canary Space was longer, so there was like 4 movies in there instead of 2. Instead of 3 movies, there are 3 movies in here. That's all. It's a trilogy. Not going on to the other ones. There's enough of what happens in the other ones, in the other stuff, and you don't. And it's not 2394 anyway. It's not 2494. It's still 2388 and 2389, roughly, in book 2 and 3, and yeah, and it's the class of 2490. That's courage in them. 2490. Not 2390, 2490. Yeah, we're not back in the 100 years earlier. No. So yeah, you don't need to know all that, except that it's going to be cool, and yeah, there's a lot of it's going to be good. So I'm just going on ahead and going on about the other ships and stuff, and I'm going to stop instead of rambling about the Secret World. Page 199 starts the dialogue, and yeah, this is another Tim episode. So yeah, so was the last one. So yeah, he did the 2 finale ones. Homecoming and the Queen Must Die. Did I want to helped on those one too? This one's one of his. So yeah, Cantrell episode. Okay, so here we go. So this is going to be a meeting room scene, and it's followed by a scene in the lounge with Azeroth playing bingo. Why? Don't need that. Really, really don't need that. That's just filler. We don't need that. So, yeah, we're not filming that. All right, so this is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster. We're back on track, on schedule. Managed to crank out The Secret World in a day. So, about 22 pages. So, if we keep that pace up, we may be done with movie 1 by the end of May. No, March. This might be the May. Come on, March. Famous last words. Ha ha ha. We'll see about the weekend, where the weekend usually, we should have been doing stuff on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Just weren't. Other things came up. Hopefully it doesn't happen this week. There's probably going to be times that it's quiet that you can do Saturday and Sunday a little bit too. But it was very noisy like half the day today, and it was amazing that we were able to pull off what was done. Also getting toward the end there, even though it was a night shoot for this part, and doing that as well. So Starcrackers, when it was Starcrackers, and there's a writing room and that kind of thing in the 90s, alongside Distant Cousins at the time, in the 90s, was a role-playing game as well. So they cast from Starcrackers that were in the movie Starcrackers: The Sphere of Influence would contribute the writing room to the episodes, and this is one of them. The last one was, the previous one was, I didn't talk much about that one. The Lesson at Rebia. Lesson at Rebia was elements of a Mark's Cards story, elements of a Tim story, and a Jim Chicon story thrown in there. A little bit of Mark's Cards. It was similar to the PL stories that came before, so it had to be all tame and nice. So that's stuff they encountered. There's another one like that coming up called Planet of Desire, near the end of novel 1. Movie 2, the middle of novel 1. Movie 2. There's 3 novels in season 1, which made novel 1. The fan film series went on. So we're in the middle of we're trekking along through the second movie, which is the middle of the book, basically. And despite all the other books and stuff and stuff, this is something we entirely control the entire narrative, the sphere of influence, if you will, in the story, and because we can control it. So this role-playing game thing at Evergreen College, junior college, and then San Jose State. This is still evergreen at this point. This is still evergreen, and you can tell that when we get to the Secret World and the follow-up differences, which was later on, we had this idea, story, political thriller thing floating around. And I know other people have said, "Oh, we want to do a political thriller Star Trek. That would be cool and everything." And you're ripping it off. You're taking it. No, we're not taking that to do this. This is old. This story is very, very old. These episodes after Sphere of Influence, the second half of the Sphere of Influence movie was taken from a 2001 story. The second half one. First half was from a 1991 story, 10 years earlier. These are from 1991-92, so they're very, very long time ago. So any political stuff, WMDs and that kind of thing, would not be the second Gulf War, but rather the first one. In the Kuwait War. That's what you'd be referencing. In this one there's nothing modern. It's not modern. It does point out an interesting dichotomy in Star Trek stories, and especially in classic Trek, but in Next Generation a little bit. That classic trope of, a dozen of our heroes beam down to a planet, or they go down to a planet, and they affect the government of the entire planet somehow. And this story had a slight rewrite in it where it said, no, it wasn't the whole planet. It's just this one continent, this one place, this one area on the planet. Just kind of fun that they did that in there in the game in '92. That's kind of funny. Why would they do that? Yeah, go to the planet. Yeah, and it was a Tim Cantrell episode. Yes, The Secret World was one of his. You can kind of tell because it's a Schmidt episode, and he was Schmidt in the show. And he wanted to have an episode where he gets to kick butt. And strangely enough, his character doesn't actually kick butt at all in it. The Henderson is the one that Henderson and Milto shoot the bad guy. So, strangely enough, he doesn't kick butt. Because we thought it would be funnier if he didn't actually do that. Because in real life he would, but funny if he didn't. Yeah, but he did end up making this episode. So. This is also similar in some ways to Transformers Meets Robotech, which came 10 years later. Some of the elements of that are in this, which is kind of fun to look back and think, oh, wait a minute, isn't this kind of like that episode with the bad guy destroying himself, kind of like thing, in that other story, one of the bad guys in the Cobra guys in that one. Yes, it is, because we ripped off our own stuff. But it's not like the Strawberry ending. That was different. The Strawberry ending is more like The Queen Must Die, which is coming up. That's another Tim episode. Homecoming and The Queen Must Die were another Tim episode. Part of Homecoming was actually Martha, years ago. This one had some elements of that too. The training mission one is too. She didn't do it. Wasn't in it much, but there's a little bit of inspiration, let's say, in there definitely. But yeah, and then which is the not going to go into politics about the story or anything like that because it is not relevant. It's interesting that I was thinking about the story and how it works out and the nation state and all that the story and thinking it was Tim in his prime always a conservative. I think he always was. The what he does in the story is definitely. Yeah, era conservative. Yeah, a little bit more of a little bit more radical now, but back then, no, definitely. Yeah, it's a weird story. Some elements of it are a little simplistic. The idea that they could go down to the planet and do a Star Trek sort of ending type of, we'll just stop the WMD maker lady in the story. That's not how that works. In a silly fictional story, it's fine. And there's a lot of the characters are similar from the last episode, just because it's the same actors. It's not unheard of though. They've done stuff like that. And the introduction of Alicia Nguyen was a brilliant idea. Actually, it turns out that character is really well done. It wasn't just a token new character in the show. It's basically the Ro Laren replacing Wesley Crusher toward the end of TNG there. It's basically that. It's Ro Laren. And it isn't a Ro figure, it's a Troy figure. If it had been a Ro figure, it would have been too on point, I think. It's right. Also, she's kind of the logical grounding of the story. Whereas there's no central villain in this story. It's more like, okay, the bad guy is a certain way, but there's no central villain really. Darren is an antagonist to Clark, but sort of like an academy bully, basically. And having they don't address that McPherson, the other McPherson / what's her face isn't even there in this one. Even though it's the same guy from the other movie, that she's of course taken off to be Pettia. Makes sense. She took off. Yeah, so she's the Pettia person. That totally makes sense. That actually worked in the movie. You thought it was an error. It wasn't an error. It turns out it actually was part of the script. She just followed along the script. And I wanted to finish this tonight because it was so close to being finished. She said, "I'll just shoot the last 8 pages. It's fine. Let's do it. Let's get it done." And hopefully it's really cool. And we don't have to do any reshoots. That'd be nice. Planet episode. Hey, it wasn't a bottle show. It was a Planet Hell episode. Planet. This little short episode. Yeah, they kind of seem like they're kind of lower decky kind of thing. More or less, it's Lori. It's Lori. Except she's a little more rebellious. Lori, she was not rebellious, really. A little more spunky, a little more out there. She's similar to Angie Tyson character from Bluesen. Similar to that too. And also she does resemble the Borg version of Kestra Riker, and it's not supposed to be Kestra Riker. It's supposed to be the actress that played Kestra Riker out of her hair and makeup. You didn't look like the proper person. She was one of the Abbeys, the adult Abbeys. That's who she is. Which is weird because she's not Asian, so it's kind of a messed up stereotype. She's playing Asian, again, playing an Asian. She's not, and she's not an inspiration for anybody current. It's somebody from the '90s, so don't worry about that. It's somebody from the '90s. She's similar to DeVries, and just because of she's the Fillet Lady. That we call the Fillet Lady. The lady we call the Fillet Lady. Because if it was 1992 or 93, it would have been young MC Kim. No, 20-something MC Kim. MC Kim, yeah. So she's in two different places in the story. Well, in this version, she's probably the daughter of the other one. Actually, what it probably is well, it's not going to be canon in the story. Just as a joke, aside. She's probably just one of the daughters of MC Kim, and the other Kimchi's the other daughter of MC Kim. So, yeah, she's another daughter. Yeah, just her other daughter. It's Kat and Kim. Their names are Jody and Catherine Jr. I think strange. Ew. Because she figured, well, I'll just name my. So if guys can name their kid Junior, why can't I name my kid Junior? Okay, so she did. In the story, the character did. The character. Made up character. Anyway, that's the Alicia Nguyen story. We wanted to include other characters because the entire cast was white. So it wasn't based on anyone directly. We couldn't get, back in the 90s, Lori Shear to be in it. She didn't want to be in it. She kind of did, but kind of didn't. So she appeared on location, but not in the. She was okay with the journal stuff. But the Star Trek thing, not so sure about that. But yes, the Secret World, which later evolved into the Differences Planet, which later evolved into some elements of the planet in Fearful Symmetry, which it went on again to be the planet in the two planets that were at war with each other in the Arbiter, which became the Arbiter of Keptera. That's all. So it is a planet from Legacy. They go back to. They say, the planet was devastated about a century ago. Well, a little less than a century ago. A little less than a century. 80 years ago. 70 years ago. No. Or it's a colony. It's probably a colony because the way they describe the planet they went to, it doesn't quite fit. If it's the planet from the other story, from Differences, it doesn't really fit the planet from Prospectors, where they mention the missing Lattori again, and the flighted kangaroo, and the thing flies around. Yeah, it doesn't fit that. It's more about the Greys and the Litkra and the Darkrai. It's sort of the Litkra Darkrai planet. It's sort of, that system. It's sort of that. It's probably more what we were thinking, which is the part that is the element of Martha's addition to it. This gray alien planet. Go to the gray alien planet. That's all. Really, go to the gray alien planet. I really like that. That is beginnings in the can. Done. I'll comment a little afterward. This was a a Kal Kat one, little marks cards. We'll comment a little after. It's Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and I'm adding a bit of making of to the end of today's episode shoot. We got through beginnings, the next episode in the story. I believe it's the 5th one of I think there's 10 in book 1. In book 1, movie 2. We're in the middle of movie 2. And it deals with basically the first season, quote unquote, of the series, the first season, which is the one with the Petia story arc. So we're dealing with the Petia story arc to the end of this middle chapter in the novel, the middle of it, the middle 150 pages roughly. And so the beginnings was not a Cantrell episode. It was more of a Kal Kat episode, but it did have a little bit of some of the evergreen people in it. Alan Kakanami was one of the characters in it, mentioned it. He's somebody else in this one, though. They don't mention him by name. He's a guard at one point. Also, there were 2 other guards that had no name, that sort of pseudo had a name, and there was a video editor in the story that kind of had a name, and I decided, well, this is where we have the cameo in this story by the pseudo the 3 hack frauds from the Red Letter Media parody. This is where they appear. The video operator guy is the J Birdman character, J-Bomb character. And one of the generals is on the planet is Rich Evans, or Everson in the story, or Mike Everson, and then Mike Matthews is of course the main protagonist, general guy that Devin Clark goes to visit, and playing someone else. So they're playing other different people. Also, we clarify the appearance of McPherson, that she was supposed to be married to Vadris Petia, and that Vadris Petia apparently is some sort of shapeshifter, and he assumes her form when he's talking to Clark at the end, and then turns back, thus explaining in the other book how she can be in 2 places at once. So he's a shapeshifter, and it's actually him. They discover the voice is him, and that it's been And also, it's kind of funny that I think the story was written in 1992. The very earliest inklings of digital video media and stuff like that. The VCR era was on its out. There were the DVD revolution was starting and that kind of thing, and HD and Laserdisc was going to DVD, and it was the 90s. Early cell phones had started, and they were the size of a brick, and so there's an episode here where they talk about the video department, because that was part of the Flyer newspaper was the video department. RTVF was also a slightly different place. RTVF was Mark's Cards, that's what he's doing, what John was doing. I was in journalism, but I was not majoring in journalism at Evergreen. I was majoring in general studies, emphasis on English, but I also did journalism too. And then at San Jose State, I went on and did English, because the journalism department in the 90s wasn't very good. And I just went on to do English and English stuff and editing stuff. And then San Jose State. And then on to journalism 10 years later, 2006 to 2008. So this story has this, when it was good. So this story has a punch on to make fun of a video editing crime procedural type of show, because it's space cops, because they're space cops. So what happened if some of them are framed for an incident that happened in 2486? In the story, it's the 2490s, so it's earlier in the 2490s. But in this version, it's 2486. They're framed by the bad guys who want to get rid of them so that Clark's crew is no longer competent, so they can fight them. That's basically their motivation. And so this episode has some of that. It's funny that it's predicting procedural shows that would be happening later in the 2000s and other things like that. So yeah, that's kind of it, really. Beginnings was a simple little episode. It wasn't anything special. It wasn't taking off on other stuff, but since it's since at this point you're doing Space Vanguards or Advanced Guard, like you did Canary Space, and saying it's a Star Trek thing. It's going back to making it a Star Trek thing. They can certainly put this video image thing on holodeck on the ship. So the ship has a holodeck, so they go on the holodeck and they play the video on the holodeck, and that actually totally makes sense in the story. It's like, oh, yeah, they would put it on the holodeck. See what was going on. So there's a scene on the holodeck in the story. You go, ooh, there's a scene on the holodeck. Yes, there's a scene on the holodeck. You get to see the holodeck on the Vanguard. So, anyway, so yeah. That's really all there is to say about that one. That it was an interesting story that became a little story we came up with. The character of Aurora Petia is not based on anyone. I don't think. I don't know of anybody from that, unless it's a spoof of LaTanya Wilson from Pine Hill, but why would I do that? So I don't think it is. I think she's just like a fictional adventurous type of character that from the Evergreen Planet series, and she just happened to come over to this one, be in this one because she wanted to. That'd be my guess. She wanted to be the villain in this episode. There was no one specifically like her. The name Aurora is similar to a character from Pine Hill, but she isn't described that way. So, I'm thinking it's not. They just stole the name again, someone's name. There's a couple other names, Terra, and other ones that are kind of odd. That kind of all sound similar. Terra and Tira and Tyria. 3 of them like that in the story. Coming up with short stories that become, well, basically 15-minute episodes, 16-minute episodes. Kind of a thing we were doing that season with the series. Of course, we weren't filming these episodes. This was, at this point, the pilot was never completed, and it was just sitting there for like 15 years or something, or at least 10 years or 11 years, and then later on for an additional 7 or 8. Yeah, so there was yeah, so it was Evergreen story. So if you see some similarities to the episode where they go to Miriam's planet, the Evergreen planet, / the Evergreen planet / the Cillian planet, you'll know that this is clearly a reference to that too. And yeah, 2480s is 2488 is when the story takes place, I think. In this one, in the current time period. Yeah, so no time travel involved or anything like that. And also the story guide for the is up on the Google. No, nobody looks at it, but it's up on the Google. It's up to the first Vanguards novel. So this scene where he says, "I'll give you 5 minutes to surrender." Well, it's been 5 minutes. So what you have to do is, instead of have this weird insert bar scene that comes up immediately after this scene, and we have 2 people in the bar talking drinks as if something's not happening, you need to put the next bridge scene right here and have him go, "Oh, and then give me the technique or else, then I'll attack you later," so that we can give them a little more time for the crew to do their thing. So in terms of editing a story, this is an early script that we're using as an episode here. And yeah, you kind of have to do that. You have to, yeah, so let's get him contacting them, because it's been 5 minutes, and talking to them. And then go on to the bar scenes, where he's giving them more time, basically. Because otherwise, yeah, the pacing is weird. They just decide to go drinking in the bar. Because 10 forward in the original Star Trek, we have to go to 10 forward. And also keep in mind that this was filmed in 1992, or this story, and Deep Space Nine did not exist yet. They were building it. So it's not reference to Deep Space Nine and Quarks. It's 10 forward. Anyway, so yeah. Okay, that was the end of page 269 and half of the story. So yeah, there was a lot going on. But yeah, and that's the end of this tape. Yeah, and I changed a line about Thompson in that he should just say that, yeah, he should just say that it's 2488. Why would he be homosexual? So it'd be a gay joke. It didn't work, so I updated the joke. So it was more like, oh, he Instead of him being affronted, he was like, "Oh, that guy's kind of cute, but I'm not gay," which is funnier because it's like, okay, now it's not a gay joke, now it's a homoerotic joke where he's like, "Oh, oh." I want to chime in right here because this is a little bit weird in that they're not really doing Ghost in the Shell, making it Clark and making it have an artificial soul and all that stuff like Ghost in the Shell, which was it'd come out a year or so before the story. What they're doing is they're giving them a doll. He knows it's going to be a doll. It's not going to fool him any. They're just going to give him the doll long enough for them to take off. That's the plan. So you don't need to overthink the cloning process thing and all that stuff. It's just they're giving him a fake. So that makes way more sense. So yeah. Okay. I'll just make it real brief. How about that? Yeah, on the set of finished up episode 6 here in the book. There's 9 in movie 2, and there's an additional 10 to episode 10 to episode 16 in book 3. And that the movie 1. This is movie 2 that we're finishing up. We're gonna go on to movie 3 is what I meant. Yeah, and the movie 3 is after this one. So after episode 9 is movie 3. We're going to film all of the episodes and then put the 2 movies together back to back. And we're already going on the other stuff like that. First pass and all that. This episode is interesting because I don't think it's been changed since the original concept. I did sort of rearrange some things on the way because I thought that the bar scenes kind of belonged after the bad guy threatens the ship, because otherwise it didn't make sense that they would stop to go to the bar and hang out there for like 10 minutes. And they said, oh, it's going to be like, yeah, that's fine. They can go to 10 forward. And this is before Deep Space Nine. The script is a 2000. This script is a 1992-93 script. Yeah, and the dates are weird, so I just didn't mention them. Clearly, it doesn't reference anything from Deep Space Nine yet, because it didn't exist yet. It does reference, though, a movie that was current at the time of the story, Three Ninjas, which was actually in production before the story. There were other things that were going on in the story, and the other various other schools. The 90s was a big season for the late 80s, early 90s was a big season for martial arts schools and ninja academies, that kind of thing, because of Ninja Turtles and all that. Power Rangers, not so much Transformers. They really didn't do ninjas. That was kind of on the out, so it was like Super Sentai was really big, and there was all Power Rangers stuff. And so yeah, so there was a martial arts school that they trained at the time for 18 years. Starting in 1988, it was called Jung Swan. And their rival school was Ernie Ray's Taekwondo or karate. Ernie Ray's karate. So they had they were involved in. There was one tournament in 1990, and there was other stuff, and there was some movie productions that they did, and we were uncredited, unpaid extras in some of these movies, and one of them actually is relatively known. The others are obscure, but this one that was relatively known was the Three Ninjas, and that was the one where we where the director, the producers, whatever, they get a casting call kind of thing for this, and I was probably 20 something like that, 20, 21 when they were shooting that, and so it was a little bit before the actual date that it came out. Yeah, and can you still play a teenager? Yeah, I get to. So at the time, yeah, all you have to do is stand in this spot in a row. It's like you're sparring, like a regular school that you train at. And I was in, I think it was 1990. I would have been, was I a green belt yet? Not quite, almost. Yeah, probably. And we had to line up in a line, and we had like numbered things. And the uniforms were unmarked. And we're in the background while the kids are doing the action. The It's a kiddie ninja movie. So we were just in the background, and all we had to do was make noise. So we're in the background making noise. And and the Twombly flip technique was actually a joke on the set of that movie, behind the scenes. And they put it in this episode. I thought it would be funny. It was funny, the Twombly flip technique. It actually is kind of something. It's sort of a judo flip, but yeah. But in the movie, it's a joke. It's a prank. The Twombly flip technique is the most deadly ever. And I was in my 20s, and there was a slightly younger teenager, shorter, head shorter than me, by the name Ernie Reyes Jr. And they had to spar with him. They put him in the credits because he was known. He was an actor. Actor. So he was known. That kid was in the credits. He knew what he was doing. Not that same school, but a different one. Yeah. Different one. Different techniques, too. Karate's different from Taekwondo. It's different. Yeah. Kung Fu is more like pushing and gripping and falling and blocking and using your momentum of the other guy, the opponent, and pushing them out of the way. Karate is more, you're using the momentum as well, but you're using the momentum and turning the object into something to use as something to fight. And Taekwondo is sort of in between, and you use your hand to defeat. Yeah. So the stuff Jackie Chan was doing was technically both Kung Fu and Karate and Jiu-Jitsu and a bunch of other things. So when he was doing his old classic stuff, he was doing all kinds of things. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I thought it was funny. The Twombly flip technique. I thought you just mentioned that actually was sort of a thing, but it was a joke. And it had to. There was a scene in the story in which they activate an explosive device to distract them while Ginoli escapes. In the story, in this episode. So I was like, let's rewrite that so that when the device activates, what it is it's a holographic message from these two holographic characters. The Cal Hazel guy shows up again, and it's actually Benton from Distant Cousins. And also the robot is Beth Cassins from Distant Cousins as the robot, and Benton from Distant Cousins who shows up. So it's not a cameo, it's not a crossover. It's they're playing somebody else. And also the Harry Kim from Distant Cousins, who was Wong in Distant Cousins, also shows up playing Ernie. And they tell the audience that, the Twombly flip technique was a joke on the set of this movie. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Just tell the bad guys that. The device has been left here just in case anybody uses it. It's not a doomsday weapon. So we're sort of spoofing the doomsday weapon story from Canary Space, of which Mark's Cards also spoofed and said like, oh yeah, it's not a doomsday weapon. It's just a joke. This is literally, come on, this wouldn't do that. So the bad guy wanted a doomsday weapon, and it didn't work. And I slightly made the ending punchier. I kind of rewrote the last 2 pages of the episode and made it more like, okay, they're not, in this episode, they're not exactly proposing marriage, Henderson and Sarah, that would be stupid. No, they're just proposing a date. This makes more sense. Also, it's not 3 years later as in the story. That's just because we screwed up the timeline earlier on in the episodes. We didn't intend to make an episodic series out of it. So I wrote them as episodes with intent to someday do that. I thought for sure, in terms of the RPG on the flyer, this is the Evergreen Flyer part of it, and the On Location 2 journal part of it, which then I'd have to explain all of that. But suffice it to say, the early version of Starship Locations aired at Evergreen College in the 90s and then San Jose State. And a part of it was called On Location 2, The Adventures Anew. And On Location 2, Courses and Comments, and some other names were used. And that was the non-fiction version of it. But Starship Locations was a fiction version of it. It was sort of like Silly Trek. And we also call it Starcrackers. And that's what this whole series is Starcrackers. It's been retitled as Space Vanguards, or as Advanced Guard. But it is just Starcrackers. And after 31 years, the series was greenlit. And it is this trilogy of movies. You get to see the trilogy. Also, I think it's funny that in the last episode we had Khaki comes back in the story. it's not him, but we're playing him. But it's a wild-eyed Klingon. He would love that. He would have been all okay. Yeah, I'm a Klingon in this one. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. And the khaki figure appears again as the Ernie figure in the story, as the cousins get. That's the Ernie figure. Even though their Kakanami is clearly Japanese as a character, and he wouldn't be Korean. But oh well, that's fine. Sort of. But that's fine. Sure, why not? And Ernie Reyes, I think the Reyes were Filipino, actually. That's what they were. I'm pretty sure they were Filipino. Yeah, I think they are. Or islander, some kind of islander. They weren't. Yeah, they weren't Hispanic. I think they were. Well, this is a Hispanic name, but it's an island. I'd have to look that up, but yeah. And I doubt that the production team of that movie would remember the appearance of Kal Kat in their movie. So they don't need to go on the IMDb and change that, because it was an uncredited role, and they have to list all the uncredited roles. That'd be silly. Oh, don't bother. But yes. But he remembered me. Kid remembered. Oh, that's that guy. At that convention that one time that I talked about. Many times on the show. On my other shows. Oh yeah, there's the guy at the convention. Yeah. I think I don't know if he'd like this one or not. He probably would. He would laugh at the Twimbly flip typing. He would if we watch this episode when it comes out. He'd be all the Twimbly flip. He'd be like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, the Twimbly flip technique, of course. That's the technique. Twimbly. I'm assuming that Twimbly might be rude. That's why it was so giggly, but I don't know. Maybe if it is, oops. But yes, the crew takes on, and then they leave. The bad guy. Yeah, I kind of fixed it so that the ending was. Yeah, so they obviously get from the story here that they trick the bad guy, in that. And that he just figures they're so weird he doesn't want them anymore. Which is an interesting idea. It's like, what would happen if a Star Trek episode happened where they decided the crew was so bizarre that they just didn't want to take them prisoner? Like, okay, obviously you want to get rid of me. So we're breaking up with you right now. They just take off. That did happen at Evergreen. That is actually a throwback to a scene from Evergreen involving yours truly, the Kal Katster, trying to break it off with a crazy chick. That I'm not going to say her name. What does that mean? But one of the crazy chicks that encountered at Evergreen, there were several, but one of them, I pretended like I was really bizarre. And she didn't want anything to do with me after that. But yes, what would have been that anyway, though? Been moody anyway back then, because we were not emo, but we pretend emo. Yeah, we weren't goth or anything. Just, yeah, emotionally messed up back then. But yes, so that is the story behind Birthday Girl. Originally does not represent Zerazo, and the aunt doesn't either. It's not anybody we know. It's not a reflection of anyone's sister or aunt or anything. Henderson is vaguely Jamie from the cast. Messy. But yeah, from back in the day. But not to an extent that you say, oh, that is him. Absolutely. No, it's sort of an archetype. And we've been over that before. So I think a good, as far as behind the scenes. So this is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster. Before we go on to film Homecoming, I reviewed the 180 pages into book 2, I believe it was, because there was like people in the park doing stuff. It's Friday, that usually happens. There are people mowing lawns and weed line. That has stopped now at this point, so I think we can actually go on to filming. But I did skim through the what would be about the first third of book 2, just to see what it was and how it works and everything. I would say, even though you don't, because you would have to rewrite it considerably, like you did the Canary Space fourth act, and rewrite it so that certain events didn't happen at all, and certain events did happen. So I think it'd kind of be messy if you wanted to do that. You'd have to. Well, I've had to have humor for one thing, pre-jokes. It's written in 95 and 96, and the height of the worry rock era of the 90s. And it shows. It's not the end of Deep Space Nine, because that didn't happen yet. Deep Space Nine ended in 1999. It appears to be that a lot of it is about the ending of Next Generation, and a little bit of the beginning of Voyager. So there's a little bit of that in there. There's a little bit of the story writing stuff elements in there that we've already covered. There's it's a lot of what's already been covered. It's not as funny. It's not as witty. It's kind of taking itself a little more seriously, and it's more like a Canary Space story. But really, it doesn't have to be. I would say, don't do it. If for some reason you want to, I think the ending of book 1 is fine for what it is. The series is not a serious space epic, space war thing. It's fantasy. It is an ensemble cast, but we don't want to start it to become like a Star Wars type of deal, or a space battle type of deal, where it's kind of the same problem with some of the later Canary Space stuff, where it becomes like a space battle, a war story, a BSG type of thing. Really, we don't want that, because that's not fun. Space war and political intrigue, and they invade Rebia and stuff. Not as much fun. But if you did do it, it would be. Don't do it. But if you did, it would be just up to about episode 18 or 19, up to the genome episode, and then stop. So you wouldn't do the finale with that. You wouldn't go all the way to the end of book 2 at all. You wouldn't do that at all. You'd stop with the middle of the season, the middle storybooks, and the sort of pseudo reboot stuff before the Aslo Trimate stuff in 1997. You'd stop before that, and stop before the Aristotle story. You really wouldn't. It wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. The theme is so radically different that, like the Canary Space one, which at that point had ended. Distant Journeys had ended, so that's what happened there, and they just went on and did some other stuff like that's in Planet District. Canary Space, early version of it, Distant Cousins, had ended. You were kind of angsty about that, and it shows. Also, they reference the genome thing and the other thing from Prospectors, and they pull it back to this one, the reunion story, and have them come back together, and then have them reassigned. And basically, it's Schmidt running around as the commander of the ship, because Clark is kind of out of the picture a little bit. And why would we want to do that? It just doesn't. It doesn't work. The end of Send Off. It should be the end of the story, even if it's short. In that trilogy, and it doesn't need to be a quadrilogy just because the other show did a quadrilogy. It doesn't. The trilogy is fine. It's fine. It's not that it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that punchy. It doesn't have to be, okay, we're going to do exactly this because this has to be there, and we have to have, the genome thing. That, to explain what that is there was something called the Genome Project in the 90s. There was all this hype over that. There was also hype over the black holes and what they were in the 90s, and that's where all of that Maelstrom stuff comes from. There was a genome thing as well. And we didn't know it was called uplifting. We called it uplifting later, but that's what they were doing. They were talking about making humanoid animal creatures. They were uplifting them to make them more humanoid, because there were no aliens in the original story. In this one just said, no, there are aliens. They just, one of them died out, which makes a little more sense. It's not completely a dark forest. That would just be, which is something else that was later established in the 2000s. The internet changed all of that. Basically, the internet was new and it was starting out in the 90s, in the early 90s, and by then there was all these other people using the same similar ideas and stuff like that. And incidentally, Twimbly is a 2019 something. Twimbly is a Australian band, apparently, band lady. In 2019 though, but back in 1992. Didn't know what that was. So this person probably wasn't even born yet when we thought. So that's kind of fun. Anyway, so yeah, but we can use ours because it's spelled differently, and we're not paying homage to that. Clearly, it's a movie. Interestingly enough, Ernie Rice Jr. is not listed. That's not one of his #1 movies because he was in the background in that movie, that Three Ninjas. So he's listed as one of the good persons, but yeah, like the Kal Kat is not listed because he's not a star in the movie. He's in the background. No, he's not a star in the background. He's in the back. He's a background extra. He was a star in Surf Ninjas same year. But anyway, so but yeah, yeah. I'm not listed at all. So I didn't have any speaking role. I'm making a key up noise. It's not a speaking role. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, neither here nor there. So I would say, yeah, your show does not need to have. Yeah, don't go on and add another movie's length of stuff from the next book just because we need another movie's length book of stuff. Don't just do that because yeah, and definitely don't do the Vision of Rana story. The end of the series 2 years afterward. It was set 2 years in 2299 in the original version. Don't do that one at all because that's just the shocking conclusion of that wasn't all that shocking, and now 30 years later it really isn't all that shocking. Ooh, it turned out that the Zuri commander lady that they were worshiping was not a lady. It's a lady boy. That was the joke. He was. Ooh, that's so shocking. Now in 2025, that's not shocking. It's like, well, why would that be shocking to them in the distant future? They would be like, what? Is that the joke? It's not a joke. It's just kind of like, eh. Anyway, the genome thing was also odd in that, yeah, we thought, oh, it was this big deal, the uplifting the aliens and all that. And it's like, this doesn't really, yeah. We were young and inexperienced in writing stuff and putting stories together and assumed we were the center of the universe in our high school and then in college discovered we weren't. And that threw us for a loop, and that's why a lot of these characters come off as kind of angst-ridden and emo. Because they kind of were. They were like, oh, darn it, these other people thought of these same ideas we did at the same time. Of course they did. They're people and they have minds. They're going to come up with similar ideas to us. Why we thought ours was special in some way, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the going back to these stories, it's great that we're putting them up for the first time ever, and that's awesome. Use story elements of them later on, like we're going to do Canary as well, story elements. And we have been. Starship locations, you can't see the episode guide. There isn't going to be an episode guide, but the Starship locations out there, if you look out and you see them, they are cribbing elements from our other stuff and putting them in the episodes. That's why it seems similar, because it is. It's like, oh, wait, didn't you do something with a twist with a space bomb thing? 2 other episodes, in fact, one recently? Yes, we did. But it's in this one too. Didn't you do one where the guy was doing kind of like a Wrath of Khan when they switched the personalities and decided not to fight? Yeah, we did that before too. It's like, it's a classic Next Generation and then Deep Space Nine idea. Not so much Voyager. They didn't really do that on Voyager too much. But yeah, so we have this kind of set up stories. Yeah, I just thought to ramble on about that. Yeah, and the genome thing, we thought that was going to be a big deal, and genes and stuff, and cloning and stuff. Jurassic Park came out in '93, of course. That's probably what it is, partly. But that technology is beyond us even now, even though there's been like 5 or 6 sequels to that show and movie, and it's like, okay, they haven't really done anything like that. The closest they got to making like a dinosaur critter is some rats that they added stuff to, and some chickens they added stuff to. But then they had to kill them because they were weird mutant things. It didn't really work, so yeah, and then some of it turned out to be fake, of course. Like, oh, the 2 fathers mouse. No, you didn't really do that. You the other rat had an egg, and you didn't really do that. But yeah, and you didn't have a dino chicken. I mean, not really. They didn't really do that either. Yeah, we don't know enough about DNA and stuff, and as it works out, that we can even do our own genome correctly. So it's very unlikely that we can suddenly make dinosaur people. We can't. Yeah. And we're not out in space yet. That also annoyed us. Like, why aren't there? Why isn't it like our science fiction shows and mangas and animes and stuff? Why aren't there space bases and moon bases and all that? There should be. It's the year 2025 now. Nope. No moon base. Nope. We don't have a moon base. We should have a moon base so that we can launch ships to Mars from the moon, where there'd be lighter gravity. We should have that. We should have a moon base. The current 2 or 3 groups that are making rockets, well, they don't. They kind of don't know what they're doing. So, yeah. Ooh, that's all but the guy made a thing that catches the rocket. No, they played the footage backwards. He didn't catch a rocket. Played the footage back. Come on. And even if he did, what? It was going that slow? Really? No. Anyway, so, yeah, there's just like, yeah, it would have been way cooler. The black hole's a wormhole to another dimension, type of thing. It's another universe. And no, an actual black hole is not a wormhole to another dimension. The space gods are on the other side. That's not what a black hole is. A black hole is a collapsed star where it's intensely dense. It doesn't lead to another universe. It's just that it's a dead. If it's very big, it's a dead star. Yeah, the gravity would be on a very big one would suck you in, but on a smaller one it might not. You can orbit it. Yeah, so it's not a wormhole like in Star Trek '09. And that changed everything when we discovered more about black holes and Stephen Hawking and all that. And we're like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of doesn't make any sense. It would be an instant destroy you die device where you get spaghettified and splattered all over the surface of singularity. You would be dead. Yeah, so yeah, even Voyager didn't have that right. A crack in the event horizon. The event horizon is mathematical. It's not a real. Yeah, you walk up to it, and if you mean the field in the Hawking radiation field around it, well then that's where they were, and there wouldn't be a crack in that. It would just be plasma. So that episode of Voyager made no sense at all. It's plasma. There wouldn't be cracks in it. You just go around it. It's in space. It's plasma. That's not as exciting. So yeah, Star Trek was doing goofy stuff when we were doing goofy stuff, and we were similar. Yeah, I think also the second book is a little too dark. Is another problem. It's too dark, too angsty. They're not having fun anymore. They're just like, we're going through the motions, and our crew breaks up, and then it comes back together. Like, do we want to film? I don't want to film that. But you don't want to see that. You want to see the crew together and having their fun. I mean, you don't want to do that. It made sense in Canary Space to do that 4th act because the 3rd wasn't finished. And there was so much left over from the 3rd act that they had to show the Earth War. We weren't going to originally, but I was like, no, we kind of do have to show that because we've been building up to it. Whereas Starcrackers, your Space Vanguards, you're not building up to an Earth War. And even though the second book kind of explores the War of the Rebia or whatever, you're kind of ripping off the Canary Space story, which did it first, like a year earlier. So don't. Remember, we're following the other. The 2 were done at the same time. The other one was following this one. So we're going to do the Earth War II with this one. It was kind of like I was saying, they didn't accept that season. They canceled it. So we'll just rewrite it and put it in this season, in this other show. Yeah. No, I'm not going to accept it now. We should not do it. It really, really should not. So, yeah. The genome thing's not that thrilling once we discovered that it couldn't really work, and we can't animate that. How do we show uplifted creature people walking around being part of the crew and stuff? How would that even work? Other than Asloth. Asloth is one guy. Kimchi is one girl. You can paint them to look like they're on the set. But, yeah, a whole army of them. The Nemesian Latori arc and all that, which is explored a little bit in the other story. Yeah, there's no need to. Definitely can't do the Arbiter of Keptera again. We just did 3 seasons ago. About a year ago or so. 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. Yeah, we can't do that again. We just did it. Yeah, we definitely can't do that one. That's in season 2. Can't do that one. Or it's in season 3. It's in season 3. Can't do that again. We just did it. We're not doing that again. There was a Canary Space one like that, too. We don't need to know where the planets end up. We don't need to know where Zuri ends up. We don't need to have a fight where Raxler and another bad guy, his Terrier and Dragon and some other ones, where they have a Wrath of Khan type fight with the Josh Braun to destroy the ship nearly. We don't need to do that again. We kind of already did that. We don't need to, yeah. So I read that story and I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. This is just, yeah, book 1 is fine. Finish book 1, trilogy, boom, that's it. And don't worry about that other stuff that's trying so hard to spoof Deep Space Nine that it's a new show, that it's that it just kind of doesn't gel so well. It's not that it's a bad story. It's a fine story as a novel, works as a novel, but you imagine it as a $300 million epic space war series. There's no way to film that. There just isn't. Like the last 5 books of Canary Space, you can't film that. It's too much. I'm not saying we're dissing the books, though. The books are fine. I'm just saying you cannot film for the animated feature version, anything like that. And we're not going to do a live action one, obviously. So let's just stay here where we are, finishing up this being movie 2 this month, and then going on to next month, filming movie 3, and book 1 ends, and there we go. Let's get on with Homecoming and The Queen Must Die, and Planet of Desire, the last 3 episodes of 1, which is about an hour. Probably about an hour. It's very long. It's a little over an hour. So actually, we technically filmed half of movie 1 so far. Another hours, 2 hours, right? Yeah, so we're not that far along. Yeah, movie 1, book 1 is 3 movies. That's all it needs to be. Canary Space was 4 because there was extra stuff and it was a longer story. We don't cover all of it. And we couldn't end it where we ended it. Yeah, it would have. Yeah, we had to have a 4th act to wrap up everything. Here we don't need to wrap up everything. Here I think the characters going on, the end of Send-Off is the perfect ending. If we have more of them, it kind of is like, they come back together, yeah, and they have another adventure, but they're angry. And they go and fight the other guys and they're angry about it. That's not going to work. No, it's no, we're not going. Yeah. This 3 are it. Before we go on with this, let it be known that some earlier comments in the Beyond of this regarding the show during making the episodes, which were never aired as episodes, they were just scripts, was that Clark and crew, the part of the objection to those later novellas where they started to become more competent and became like leaders, and some of them went on to have their own ships or something, and some of them governors. Part of the projection that Mark's Cards had, which should apply to any attempt to do any other stuff after novel 1, it should apply in this case. They're not competent enough to have pulled off what the things they're doing in the story. If they become competent, like say the Next Generation crew, then it loses something in that they're suddenly, able to totally do stuff, and yeah, we're really good at our jobs. If they're suddenly good at their jobs, then it's not as funny. They shouldn't be good at their jobs and angsty, and there shouldn't be necessarily a continuation into the second season or the second book, because they'd be too competent. And also the story about Rebel Ship, although it was fun to have written it, the attack story with the other ship and Raxler. Raxler wouldn't have let the other guy build a ship that's going to destroy his ship. Why would he do that? Doesn't make any sense either. Raxler is competent enough, at least for himself, to know I'm not going to let somebody else upstart make a ship that can destroy mine. Why would I do that? That kind of defeats Now, the later stuff just didn't work. That's why we're not doing the later stuff. So let's just go on to do this, and let's finish the trilogy. Well, this is near the end of movie 2 of the trilogy, and then go on because the competence left. Clark and crew can't stop a conspiracy, as we'll discover in this episode, Homecoming and the Queen Must Die. It's sort of a two-part, another Tim Cantrell episode. That well, Mark Cards is there too, and some of the Evergreen Flyer people in the background during the writing of this episode. These episodes never aired on a show anywhere, so let that be known that there was never a show. It was scripts. They never aired. They were completely in-house. They never aired. It was part of a role-playing game called Starcrackers. So let's clarify that too. Let's go on. So again, I'm going to flip a mini segment of scene like I did with the other one, because I want the shuttlecraft lady and Kimchi leaving the ship first, and then the comment about Macon. And then I want to go back to the bridge and Sarah Ginoli second, and then back to their bridge. Just make it flow better. Yeah. So that's the end of the episode. It was actually kind of short. The end of the episode. So yeah, this obviously part 1 of 2. The Queen Must Die is part 2. It was originally the season finale of that season, and Planet of Desire was season 2. But in this version, we want Planet of Desire to be the ending episode of this storybook season because it's fun. We don't want it to end with them destroying the bad guy Queen Lady. Also, Rebel Ship was an expansion, a later story that we're not going to do in book 2, was an expansion of this whole story arc Rebel Planet thing, as was the Rebel attack, Rebia falling, and all that other stuff. The second season was going to continue, the second book, I should say, was going to continue the events of the series and make it more dramatic and all that, and it didn't happen. I mean, it is more dramatic, it's storybook-wise, but it shouldn't. We shouldn't do that. This is not a war story. This is a gag on a war story. They really don't know what they're doing. And of course, the Queen kind of doesn't either. So yeah, and there's no actual deaths. So it's just like they show stuff and they don't actually play. So yeah, she's gonna fail. Yeah, it was there's definitely a Tim inspired episode, but both of them are. But yeah, the idea that they would go on like a raid, a la some Next Generation episodes. I wouldn't say this is Deep Space Nine because I think this was written before Deep Space Nine even started. Yeah, I think it's like a year before it started. So, or just barely. It just barely had started. So yeah, there's a little bit of that in there. And yeah, you can see it barely started at this point. Yeah. I don't need to ramble on about that too much, except that this is clearly a setup for a second act. Yeah, and that, yeah, we really don't want to do. We'll do this book. We'll finish this book. This is nearing the end of movie 2, and we're going to movie 3, which is the last third of this book, or this season, and finish that 10 through 16 episodes. This is episode. What is this? 7? 7. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, of 9. 7 of 9. Ha ha ha. 7 of 9. Yeah. Anyway, no relation to Voyager at all. Which was she was later too. Later. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like the Dominion War thing. Well, it would be like the Dominion War if it was a Dominion War was there yet. It wasn't. This is 1993. When the story was done, and there was no any thought of the Deep Space Nine, let alone the Deep Space Nine was just starting. Dominion War didn't happen until season 4 or so, season 3 and 4. So, yeah, it's before it. Yeah, and it wasn't inspired by it later or something. That was more like Rebel Ship was inspired by it, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to have a war story. This is clearly a police action that's going wrong story. That's what the gag is. They're not actually succeeding. This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster. We're going to begin filming the episode called The Queen Must Die. And then after that, Planet of Desire, finishing up movie 2. In movie 2. Movie 3 has just about 7 episodes. It needs 8. So we're gonna steal another episode from. Throw it in there. Just one. We're not going to Rebel Ship. Rebel Ship makes no sense. The one just before it was the crew reunites, and that should be. We're gonna use that one because Aurora Petty shows up again. The ending will be different from what's in the story. We'll change the ending because we've already hinted at that when Raxler showed up that he had the Cirrus destroyed before it was even finished. So yeah, that story doesn't happen in this timeline. So the second season, second book wouldn't happen in this timeline. Just threw that in there. Off screen. Yeah, and the idea of them solving conspiracies and stuff and being good at what they do. Let's not have them be good at what they do. Let's have them be like, yeah, they have to be space cops. They have to be like bad at what they do. That's the whole point. They're not competent. And as we start this next story, we see why they're not entirely competent. and actually redress the ending story. The original concept of it was different. Yeah, and the although there are some elements of one of Tim's stories in here, it was only an idea when he thought of it. He wasn't thinking of any kind of queen for real. He's probably thinking Robotech. I'm thinking the evil queen in Robotech. That's probably what he's thinking of. We're gonna do that, Robotech kind of thing. Evil. Out of the Queen of 1,000 Years as well, Queen Millennium in that series. Could have been thinking of that. Awful Captain Harlock remix that was done by the same people, Harmony Gold. Yeah. So also there's a little bit of this story addressing the Elysians, Libya, Christina Tenna and stuff. Those the Libyan from Silly Track, which was renamed the Elysian, and her sister is clearly that part of that too. It's a kind of a rewrite of the Wrath of Libyan. Is kind of what it is. It's a rewrite of the earliest Silly Track. We did it a lot better in that weird timeline episode where we got to see a version of the Elysian commander lady attacking Flodai in an episode. It was a better story. We rewrote it. So it has been done before. We've kind of seen this story before. Yeah, we have. Because we did a better version of it later. Decades later. But this one is, this was actually inspired by the actual person, Libby, who in 1990 was briefly part of the actual role-playing game where they were making fun of her character. And this episode is probably left over from that. From those rejected stories before Star Crackers even started, Graham Cracker Chronicles, 1990. Well, yeah, that's probably what this also was from. So yeah, it's kind of obvious looking at it now. Oh yeah, Libby, that's right, Libby McClanahan. That's what this is about. But yeah, so we never actually went there with Starship Locations because we knew that we're kind of doing this. So yeah, there's Starship Locations being a version of Star Crackers has this sort of like, it's like that other show that already happened. The only way that other Elysian lady worked is if she was in a parallel universe where she was the Space Hitler, where she was the evil Queen Lady in that universe where the bad guy versions of TMS took over. That's the only place in that universe where that would work. So yeah, we had this episode where she's the Empress, like the Mirror Universe. And you might say, oh, you're ripping off Star Trek Discovery. No, we're not. It's the other way around yet again. The evil Empress lady probably, definitely goes back to, because the original story, this episode, was written in 1993. 1992, 93, somewhere around there. Original episode. That was before Deep Space Nine even existed. It was in production and it was going to come out soon. Deep Space Nine. Actually, it probably was Deep Space Nine that started. So what we were probably thinking of, I think it had just started. And there was an evil Kira in there too, for the Mirror Universe. Later on in later seasons. So maybe that's what we were thinking of. I don't know, but yeah, it was the Wrath of Libyan. It's the Silly Trek story. They're making fun yet again of this character who who is a silly and angry girl from high school. Yeah, they're doing that again in this one. Except now she's a queen on a planet. Now, how could she take over a planet? Well, she really couldn't. That kind of doesn't make sense. Why would she do that? It's very topical, which is strange. But no, it's not Discovery and the evil queen lady. I would say that the Elysian that this character later becomes, in a way, is better than the evil empress in that they. It's as if Discovery heard about it and made the other lady the empress and stuff and didn't know how to do it. Yeah, there's like, I'm going to do my version of this. Yeah. But no, it doesn't work. Yeah, it wasn't Discovery. It was 1993, so it couldn't possibly be Discovery. Anyway, I'm going to go on to do the next episode. We're doing this episode as it appeared in 1993, and then we're doing all the other ones as they appeared in 1994, and it begins to become like Deep Space Nine in 1994 in Book 3. And we're very a lot like Deep Space Nine, and we don't really want to go into anything after the crew reunites story. Send Off Part 2. We don't want to go any further on than Send Off Part 2, because that's a good ending. Send Off is an okay ending, but the other one is a good ending for Book 3. We don't need to go any further with the series. We don't need to do a fourth book exploring how they became even more angsty and more 90s-like. No one would enjoy that. I think with Canary Space, you had that worked. You needed to have that last act with the space planet battle. If you do it again, it'll be like, why are you doing it again? Don't need to do that again. This is not an Avengers-level threat thing where they all come together and fight the evil bad guy lady taking over the planet. It's a joke. It's supposed to be fun. We don't actually see her do any horrible murdery things. We don't actually see that in the story. She's supposed to be an Elysian on the planet, or a Megoran as they call them in this version. But she's an Elysian, and so so that's. So quickly before we continue, there is a small scene edited out of the story. At no point in this story should the Stronghold and Curran show up in this scene. All they do is say, the Stronghold saved us. They don't do anything. They're not there again anywhere. So that shouldn't be in there. Let's go on to the next scene. Yeah. Note in the story, making of, that I changed the death of the Queen and the death of Vaudress to match up with the next movie. And also, I made it an homage to Desperate Living, which this story also references twice before, the John Waters movie. So, and I just decided to do that because it's funny. It's in there. Just made it like comical that it's an assassination. It's like a joke to them. Like anyway. So, real brief. That was The Queen Must Die. We are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. I can start on the next one to put as much of that other one to bed as possible. That'd be cool. We can do the two together. And so we're going to do that. The Queen Must Die. I threw out a John Waters line at the end because it kind of didn't have anything there at the end. It was kind of ripping off that episode of Star Trek where Worf fights the Duras guy and it just kind of ends. And I didn't want to do that. I thought it would be funnier if it was John Waters. So I did it. I changed the ending so that it was, you breathe your last breath, you sighed your last sigh thing. Also, the McPherson thing is yet again fixed because McPherson is not Alicia Pettia. McPherson is Libby Pettia. She's a twin. Libby and Chris. It's Chris Pettia. Yeah, it's Chris. So it's a little confusing, but they're twins. So the Admiral lady's older than they are. Okay, note that in the script, this is going to be the final episode of the book. Book 1, Book 2. Well, it's Book 1. It's the middle of Book 1. It's movie 2. And the Roberts scene is not in here. We don't need it. Cut it out. Let's go. There was a scene in here where Asloth does a math problem. It didn't need to be. So I just decided not to do that. So far, two chunks, 2 pages have been cut out of the story because we don't want to do that. That's just we don't want to do that. Incidentally, this story is Shades of Pink, but it's been heavily sanitized from a PL story from Vanguards Forge into just a story about the crew, the PL story crew going to Desiree. It was Shades of Pink. That's what it was. So we couldn't actually film a guy in a muscle suit popping the muscle suit. Couldn't do that. And the other stuff is and the premise has been changed around, so it's no longer a gay joke about the Forge. It's the Carriage and Dark character gets an ailment instead, and they have to cure it. Yeah. So anyway, Saturday. We knocked out 2 episodes, but they were short. We knocked out 2 episodes, the equivalent of 1, and finished movie 2, middle of book 1, and done. So, don't know what else I can say about the Shades of Pink here. I guess I could say a little bit, but this is a PL story that's been turned into a. So we did some other PL stories. We did sort of a pseudo PL stories in Legacy, and here this is an earlier one from 1992. This is a rendition of the PL story. This is a rendition of Shades of Pink, Mark's Cards PL story. It was a short story. It's a version of that, so it's directly a Mark's Cards episode. It was meant to be the premiere of season 2 of the original series. There were only 8 episodes at first. Back in the day, we pioneered the idea of an 8-episode series run. And then we had 8 episodes, 9 episodes. This is episode 9. And but technically it was 6 because, episode 6 because the other ones didn't count. So they were a mini-series, kind of. This is the end of the middle book 1 and the end of movie 2 at this point. And go on to movie 3 through the rest of next week. Hopefully we'll get more opportunities to complete the saga. And it is not terribly late, so we're going to finish that up, be done, put that in the can. I'll put it together tomorrow's first run. We'll assemble the second movie. I wonder if we should assemble the second movie first before going on to the third. Probably should, but not going to tear the sets down because they're the same sets for the next one, obviously. And I'm going to go on, and Shades of Pink was originally a very homoerotic, silly story in which the Gay LaForge from season 1 wants to teach the crew, season 2 really, he's a chief engineer at that point. So he goes down to the planet, he wants to teach the crew how to be fruity. So it goes back to 1990, it goes back to 89 or 90, somewhere around there. And so he wants the crew to be fruity. So he goes down to the planet, and there's a guy that has space AIDS in it, which is incredibly offensive, but he gets cured. So, and that ended up in the story. And here is just Zildjian Nintendosis, which is the silly Trek ailment they all seem to get, which activates their teen spirit and makes them horny. And the Techites, the Techite chocolates, the love chocolates, that goes back to the silly Trek thing too. Chocolate really doesn't do that. It doesn't make you horny. But it'd be funny if there was a society on a planet where they could do that, where there was a real aphrodisiac that literally made people horny. And it's incredibly immature and silly. It's like it doesn't really happen that way. That's not how it works. We know that's not how that works. But it's funny in the story to imply that. Of course, we couldn't actually show that. Nothing like that actually happens. The dark character receives the ailment in the story, and they got to go cure it. It's a old classic Star Trek episode. Somebody's got an ailment. They got to cure them by the end. Because apparently medical science works like that, and they can do that in an hour. By the end of the show, they're fine. Yeah, they hardly ever kill anybody in the main cast. Um, so yeah, and it's not meant to be humiliation of anybody. It's not meant to be like, oh, it's Curran from the original show, and making fun of Curran, who had other things going on that were not like that at all. It wasn't that. It wasn't anyone else from Evergreen. I don't think. Maybe it was. It wasn't anyone from the Jung Swan era either. The same time period. I think it was just us being weird, and making Shades of Pink into Planet of Desire, making it PG, and then having them go down the planet and stuff and find this tower thing. And I don't think Mark's Cards like was well, we wanted the mystery to happen, kind of an Abramsy mystery thing, before Abrams, but he yeah before Abrams, but he wanted it to be. I think he's just thinking, oh, the medical science in the tower helps him to cure it, sort of like that classic episode where Kirk gets cured. They go down to the planet and find technology to cure him. Kirk got injured and they had to cure him. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like Shore Leave. It's kind of like the planet with the Indian obelisk episode. There's a number of episodes that it's similar to. McCoy and City on the Edge of Forever are going down and doing something crazy. That kind of thing. So yeah, it's a very classic Trek in a lot of ways, but it's not spacey. It's clearly that's stupid. Um, and at that point in the '90s, they didn't have the True Vada, so they couldn't actually stop it or slow it down. It slows it down. They didn't have that. But yeah, she just has Zildanian Nintendosis, and so the idea is that the aphrodisiac has that in it, and it makes humans horny, and Techites as well. Um, it may lead to their genetic reproduction abilities. It may help them to reproduce. It may have something to do with that, the genome thing. And we're not going to even explore that later on, because that never made any sense in the later episodes anyway. So we didn't know what we were doing. Oh, the genes are going to work to make the uplifted people and stuff, and we didn't know really even what that was. That's what we were doing, uplifting the animal creatures to be humanoid. But we didn't know that was what it's called, and that it wasn't all that original, and that other people were doing it. We just weren't aware. We had read a lot of books, but we weren't aware of some of that stuff, and so that's what we ended up with. Yeah, it's a fun finale. It's a better as the finale for movie 2 because the other one's kind of dark and dramatic and stuff. So having this be the finale for movie 2 instead of the premiere of the next one, is kind of like, oh, okay, this is more fun. Silly little episode tacked on the end. The tower doesn't have any significance to the other Starship location stuff, although throwing in that it's Zildjian Nintendosis kind of does, and kind of say, okay, whatever. The cat guy and the tabby lady look like Tabby and Tiana. Well, they're their descendants. But, well, they're actually the figures. They're the figures, but they're descendants. Yeah, so Kimchi is apparently... Yeah, it doesn't make sense in the story, but if they're uplifted and there's aliens and the Nintendosis, they're Cillians, it did that. And also, they're in... It's actually, to all of them, it's really 2025. When they step out of the Cillian universe and go into their own world, it's 2025. That's how they can all meet each other, because it's not really 2488. It's not really 2413. It's really 2025. They're aware of themselves. So it's a gag. It's a gag. Don't worry about it. But in the story, it's supposed to be 2488. In the story. So, yeah, the gay jokes. I don't know what we were doing, except I thought it'd be funny. Also, it's interesting that the teacher, Steve Clark, who Clark was loosely based on, just because we stole the name and the ancestor, Clark. He actually turned out to be like bisexual, so that's kind of interesting. We were just messing around. We didn't know at the time. That, which is fine. I didn't know. So yeah, I don't know. I figure everybody in the future probably is. anyway because they're in the future and it doesn't matter. It didn't occur to them that that's either. Yeah. So yeah. So it's a retrovirus, by the way, not a virus. They keep calling it a virus, but it's a retrovirus. Anyway, the Techites do not have herd immunity, though. Or maybe they do because they're eating the chocolates. Yeah, maybe they actually do because the aphrodisiac mellows them and lets them exposed to it. That is not a good way to make a vaccine, though. Exposing them to the virus that would just kill them normally. So it isn't a good idea. It's not a good idea in the story, but in the story it just makes them horny. So yeah, that's Planet of Desire. There you go. Sure, it's fine. There's not a lot of making of for Planet of Desire just because it's simple. It works. That's what it is. There it is. That's it. Yeah. So we will see what transpires of putting together movie 2 and see what it looks like.